Greetings, class. I wanted to take just a few minutes of your time to provide you with an overview of the statistics chapters, HEV chapters 1 through 3. First, let's focus on levels of measurement. So, nominal is the lowest level of measurement. When you think of nominal, I want you to think of naming. You use numbers to name variables. In a nominal measurement, the variables are categorical, like gender, men, or women. There are some variables that can only be measured at the nominal level. When you name these variables, you give them a number. However, this value does not tell you anything. It is simply for coding purposes. For example, using gender with the nominal measurement, you could assign men a number 1 and women a number 2. There are not many types of statistical analyses that can be done. Therefore, frequencies are typically what you will see. The ratio level of measurement is simply the interval level with the additional property of a natural zero starting point. One way to differentiate the two is to perform the quote ratio test and to see what happens. Suppose there are two quantities where one number is twice the other. Now ask yourself, can twice be used correctly to describe the quantities? If the answer is no, then the data is not at the ratio level of measurement. For example, a 100-pound man is twice the weight of a 200-pound man, but 50 degrees Fahrenheit is not twice as hot as 25 degrees Fahrenheit. One reason for this is because 0 degrees Fahrenheit is not absolute zero. With both interval and ratio measures, you can use all types of statistical analysis. Variables are at the continuous level. You want to make sure that if you can measure a variable at a ratio level, then you do indeed measure it at the ratio level. Do not convert ratio variables to a lower level variable, such as ordinal. Here is an example using the variable age. If you can ask a subject to check their age and then give choices such as 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, etc., this then becomes an ordinal variable. With ordinal variables, you can basically only do frequency counts. With ratio variables, you can subject them to all types of statistical analysis. Okay. Let's move on next to discussion of independent and dependent variables. When deciding what the dependent variable is, I want you to always ask yourself, what is it that I am measuring in the study? What is the outcome of interest in the study? Your outcome and what you are measuring and what you are analyzing is the dependent variable. Always remember that you can identify the dependent variable because it is the variable that you are interested in at the conclusion of the study. The independent variable is the presumed cause, and the dependent variable is the effect. And the extraneous variables, or the confounding variables, are the potential causes that must be considered. As you begin to review quantitative articles over the next couple of weeks, focus on identifying the independent variables as well as the dependent variables for each study. This is the only way to become more comfortable with the processes. In the simplest study, there is one independent and one dependent variable. You have to be careful that you don't get confused about independent variables. In a study that is looking at whether providing education in oral or written form is better, there is only one independent variable, which is manner of presenting education. It has two levels, oral or written. Many times, particularly in outcomes research, there are multiple dependent variables or outcomes that are measured. Next, let's talk a little bit about descriptive statistics. Typically, what is reported includes sample size, sample gender, age range, etc. You might also find marital status, education, years with illness. Why is this information valuable? It does help to provide evidence on external validity. In other words, it provides evidence for the generalizability of your results. Now, the mean is what is reported most often and does provide the most information. It is like an average. The mean is the one value that takes into account all values in the distribution. Now, whenever you report a mean, you should also report a standard deviation. The standard deviation is like the mean in that it takes into account all values in a distribution. When the standard deviation is small, remember that the scores are all very similar and are closely clustered around the mean. When the standard deviation is larger, the scores are more spread out around the mean, meaning that there is more variability in the scores. Here's an example of how mean and standard deviation are interpreted. Two class sections. Assume we have class section A and class section B. Took a test and the mean score for both sections was 88. Section A has a standard deviation of 2.2 and section B has a standard deviation of 4.2. That means that the scores in section A were more alike, had a smaller range than the scores in section B. If you only had the mean, you would think that both sections were the same when in fact they are different. With badly skewed data, the median is what should be reported and not the mean. When you have skewed data, the mean can be artificially inflated or deflated based on the skewness of the data, which is why the median is often used. Remember that with quantitative data analysis, it is made easier by the computer software packages such as SPSS. The one thing to remember is that the results that you get in data analysis are only as accurate as the data that you put into the computer. It is very important that as you input data, you are careful and that there is double checking of the input of data. Doing descriptive statistics and frequency counts is one way to help screen the data so you can look to see if there are strange results or erroneous data entry errors. Results that are strange can be identified as inaccurate due to the input of data. I would encourage you to continue to reach out if you have questions or concerns relative to the content across chapters 1 and 3. There are PowerPoints as well as voice recordings relative to each of those chapters. If you have any questions, again, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you very much.